person that we are on Sunday needs to be the person that we are on Monday through Friday, right? And that's hard to say. Like, you mean, it's because it's easy at church. It's easy to go in there and we sing and we do praise and worship and we say, hi, God bless you, great sermon, pastor. It's easy there. But the challenge is that Monday through Friday, right? How do I keep God first there? And what I always tell people is this: one real great way to kind of merge those people, the Sunday me and the Monday through Friday me, is starting every day first with God and seeking Him first at the very first part of the day. If you can do that, then you've already won half the battle, because you've already started with Him, you've already prayed with Him, you've already named the tensions, and it actually can help make the day as it goes on just a little bit easier to walk in faith and walk in relationship with Him.
That's the voice of John Englehart Jr. discussing how to reconcile our Sunday selves with our rest of the week selves. Englehart shares his ideas for workweek faith based on his book, The Sunday Scaries, on today's Practical Faith Academy podcast. During our discussion, Englehart shares stories from his human resources career that illustrate the value and the techniques of living faith each day. We'll talk about how to approach a job that may seem unspectacular, but still holds value with God. We'll swap stories and ideas for practicing our faith in the workplace, and we'll delve into how to navigate difficult work environments as a Christian. I'm Cecil Taylor of Cecil Taylor Ministries, teaching Christians how to live a 7-day practical faith. Everything I do, whether blogs, books, videos, or this podcast, is about taking our faith from Sunday into the rest of the week, applying scripture and faith to life situations. In the Practical Faith Academy podcast, I add other voices with other life experiences to understand how they put faith into practice. Please subscribe to my podcast according to your listening platform's instructions. I welcome your comments and your sharing of this podcast with others. From his 15 years in human resources, John Englehart developed a deep knowledge of the workplace life. He realized that most Christians won't spend their working lives on a church staff and may not be fortunate enough to ever land their dream job. To address how to keep Jesus at the center of your workplace experience, whatever it might be, Englehart wrote The Sunday Scaries, Finding Peace and Purpose at Work While Following God. John, thank you for joining me today on the Practical Faith Academy podcast.
Yeah, Cecil, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and chat with you.
Well, I always like to start off with a faith question, and my question is, why is it important for Christians to put their faith into practice?
Yeah, for sure. Um, we need to put our faith into practice because in my book, when you have a chance to read it and you go through a lot of the stories that I share, our faith is where we derive our purpose and our peace, right? So if we're in the workplace and we're having all these challenges or stressors or that Sunday night dread heading into Sunday, our faith, when we lean into it, is where we realize what our purpose is, which is serving God, and what our peace is, and that's blessing others in His name in the workplace.
Yeah, I think we can, we're going to talk about this in various ways, but we can find purpose and peace even in the everyday, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of living a 7-day practical faith is just that walk with God every day and then trying to find the purpose and peace in that day. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because when I wrote my book, The Sunday Scares, which is all about that, finding peace and purpose at work, I gave it to my son, who was 11. And I said, hey, why don't you read this, buddy, and tell me what you think? And he took the lessons from that book, and applied it to his chores, applied it to being a fifth grader, and just the steady framework, whether it's seeking God first or treating your work as worship, mowing the lawn. How do I treat that as worship? Is that really worshiping God? Well, that's where our faith comes in. And the truth is, yes, we give God glory through all of those things. And so that's where I think a lot of the principles from the book, not only is it relevant for the workplace, but it's relevant for everyday life.
That is awesome. I love that you were able to have a son that, first of all, would pick up the book and read it, and then that he would process it in that way. That's some kid. That's
Yeah,
great.
I only had to give him $20. No, I'm kidding. Now he read it for free.
Well, you didn't charge him for the book, right? So
That's right.
there's the $20 or what have you, right? Well, on my last episode, I interviewed Reverend Kevin Taylor about listening to and obeying God in your calling and
Yeah.
also a daily life. But I recognize not everyone has a ministry calling. I mean, I had a volunteer ministry call, but not a vocational call for decades. So how can ordinary, unrecognized work still be meaningful to God?
Yeah. So where I think it really starts, and this is one of the biggest lessons from the book that I share right at the beginning, is this, is that our eternal joy, our eternal joy comes from God, right? He's eternal. Our jobs or whatever we're doing down here, whether it's driving a truck or teaching, or whether even if we're serving a church, those things are temporary assignments, right? So what I try to remind people is that, you know what, if we make our identity, or if we make that which we seek to find joy in the temporary, we will always find ourselves spinning our wheels on a daily basis. But if we're able to change our perspective and remind ourselves, you know what? My joy doesn't come from this job. My joy comes from God. God is our source. Whatever job we do is just a resource. And I try to always share that with people because I think it's really a mindset shift that really reminds us, you know what? That's right. I need to be focused on God, whether I'm a pastor or whether I am out here delivering mail or something like that. At the end of the day, God is my source, and everything I do is to give him glory.
And one thing I like to say, John, is that God needs you right where you are today in
Yeah.
some way. And I don't care what situation you're in. You can be in a hospital bed and you can still give joy to others, hopefully, if you're not, too incapacitated. But what do you think? I mean, is that part of it also?
Oh, 100%. So if it's okay, I'd like to share a story with you. This is actually how I got into human resources. So the steady framework in my book says add value where you are. Add value where you are, right? So a little bit of background about me is right out of high school, I actually joined the U.S. Postal Service. I was a mailman in downtown Baltimore. That's how I started my career working. And I worked my way up. Eventually, I became a postal supervisor. And I was about the halfway point of my career. I was about 10 years in when I was a postal supervisor, and I was miserable. I was everything you've heard about the postal service, how it can really be disgruntlingwork. It's true. It can really be. And I was really just miserable. And there were those mornings as I was getting ready to go into the post office to be a supervisor of 50 people. I would sit there with my hands on the steering wheel with tears in my eyes, and I was saying, God, what's next? I know this isn't what you have for me forever. Like, I know that you have something else that's next. What do I do to break through and get to where you've called me to be? So, a mentor of mine gave me a great piece of advice. And that's exactly what the A in the steady framework is. He said, John, what I want you to do, I want you to go into that workplace every single day, and I want you to find one person. Just find one person, and I want you to bless them. Just bless them. He goes, just do that every single day, and that's how you can add value where you are and really find some purpose and peace. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So that's what I did. I went in every day for a few months, and I found one person and I blessed them. I helped somebody or just showed some kind of kindness. And then a few months later, I was like, okay, Lord, where's the door, right? Where I'm doing what my mentor told me to do. Where's this door? And then it happened. I got a phone call, and it was from a U.S. postal inspector, which is like the mail police, right? They investigate crimes and people trying to ship drugs through the postal service. Well, he called me, and I'm at my desk. It's like 5 a.m. He goes, Mr. Englehart, we need you to go over to where all of your packages are. We need you to find this one package that we think might be a drug package. We need you to go over there, dig through them all, find them, and hold them at your desk, and we'll be at your office in 2 hours to get it. And I said to myself, that's going to take me forever. That's like finding a needle in a haystack trying to find this one package that they gave me a description of. But I said, you know what? This is where I'm going to do my bless. I'm going to bless this postal inspector today. So I went there, I did it, and I found the package, and I sat on my desk. They came out about 2 hours later, and he took the package and he said, Mr. Englehart, thank you so much for doing that for me. Thank you. That was a real blessing that you took the time. Some supervisors would probably blow us off, but you actually went and you dug through hundreds of parcels to find this. Thank you. So here's where it gets great. A month later, well, actually, in that conversation, he goes, do you love your job? And I was like, to be honest with you, not so much. I'm really waiting for the next opportunity. A month later, that postal inspector called me and said, "Hey, John, we have a detail in our HR department. Would you like to come work for us?" And that's where I started my HR career. And it's been 16 years since then, since I took that one first detail for that postal inspector. And it all started because I made a decision to simply just add value where I was, not because I love my job or because it was my dream job, but because it was my way of blessing others and giving God glory. And it opened the door to my HR career.
What an amazing story, how God can use our faithfulness in so many different ways. And it's great that you were blessed in return
Yeah.
for doing that. So, most Christians, I think it can be hard though, just like you went through, to accept that my job isn't spectacular and it's not in church, it's not ministry, it's not really service. And so you've talked a little bit about your own mindset shift. Do you have any other advice for people who are trying to just get through it? I mean, so be a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably one of the biggest, besides, add value where you are and the mindset perspective shift that God is our eternal source and our job is just a temporary resource. One that and this is something I've been using a lot lately. And so what actually got me to write the book, The Sunday Scaries, was the fact that I had been in HR and been an HR leader for quite some time now. And I found myself constantly coaching fellow believers. They'd come to me and say, "John, I'm struggling with this. John, will you pray for me? Will you help me? Will you just give me some coaching?" And I would walk them through the steady framework and help them really find purpose and peace at their work. And and that's actually what prompted me to write the book. My friend was like, "John, you got to write the book and put in there what you do and what you talk about. People, it will bless people." And what I'm finding now is as people continue to come to me now and I do some coaching in this area, I remind people that they'll come to me and say, "Oh, there's this particular coworker, or there's this boss that's micromanaging me, or I've got this deadline for this project and it's stressing me out." And I will always share with them, I say, "You know what? Name the tension. Just name it, whatever it is, right? If you're stressed out or if you're feeling that workplace dread on Sunday night and you're just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, name the tension and then turn it over to God." I've had to do that so many times. And sometimes it really is literally a supervisor, and you have to name the tension is this supervisor who is driving me crazy. Name it and then say, "God, I'm turning this over to you. I don't know how to handle this in my own wisdom and in my own strength, but I know that you do. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Help me to address this tension in a purposeful and peaceful way tomorrow." So that has actually come up a lot in my coaching, just simply stepping back and naming what that tension is, naming it, turning it over to God, and then praying about it.
I'd like to break from the discussion for a moment and ask this question. Have you ever read my 7-Day Practical Faith blog? This Foundation Award winning blog appears each Friday on the Cecil Taylor Ministries Facebook page, as well as on ceciltaylorministries.com. Each week, I share ways to put your faith into practice, taking Sunday into the rest of the week, much like the discussion John and I are having today. The blog builds upon scripture and traditional Christian principles to illustrate God's purpose for us to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the world, while also developing a daily personal connection to the Holy Trinity. Visit ceciltaylorministries.com and click blog, or search on Facebook for Cecil Taylor Ministries and read through our posts. You'll find something new and rewarding every Friday. John Englehart is my guest today on the Practical Faith Academy and really laying some very practical wisdom on us today. And John, one of the reasons I started my ministry, how I got into that, is people would tell me, I can do this Christian stuff on Sunday, but the rest of the week is hard.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about how we can take our faith into the rest of the week. And it's not only in the workplace, it's in, I think, everything we do that there could be two of us, right? There's the Sunday version of us, and then there's the rest of the week version of us. So, how do you reconcile those two people and kind of bring them together? What thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we're still the same person. That and I have, in my time doing some ministry work, I've always shared this and I've said, the person that we are on Sunday needs to be the person that we are on Monday through Friday, right? And that's hard to say. Like, you mean it's because it's easy at church. It's easy to go in there and we sing and we do praise and worship and we say, "Hi, God bless you, great sermon, Pastor." It's easy there. But the challenge is that Monday through Friday, right? How do I keep God first there? And what I always tell people is this, and a great piece of advice, and it's actually in my book, in the Steady Framework, is seek God first. And I actually share a story because, so for me, I've had some very long commutes to work, like especially when I was working in Washington D.C. and I live in Annapolis, Maryland. I mean, it was an hour and a half each way. And I seize those opportunities when I'm driving to work. That's my time with God to really start the day off with Him on a just a really, really stinky Monday that I'm not looking forward to. Guess what? I'm seeking God first and I am praying while I'm driving in, right? And I even know there's actually a friend of mine. He tells me, he goes, you know what I do on Mondays or Tuesday mornings? Those are the worst days for him. He goes, I do praise and worship in my car. I do that on the way to the job site. And I'm like, God bless you, brother. I am no singer, but if you want to, he finds a really good, he finds some really good worship, but that's what he does to seek God first. So for me, one real great way to kind of merge those people, the Sunday me and the Monday through Friday me, is starting every day first with God and seeking Him first at the very first part of the day. If you can do that, then you've already won half the battle because you've already started with Him, you've already prayed with Him, you've already named the tensions, and it actually can help make the day as it goes on just a little bit easier to walk in faith and walk in relationship with Him.
Yeah. That is just such great advice for, you know, usually I say, what's your best tip for maintaining and developing a 7 day practical faith? There it is right there, starting each day with God and giving those first fruits in a way to Him and seeking God first. You know,
Yeah.
you talked about being with people who knew you were a Christian, I believe, and were able to ask you questions from that perspective. But you know, many of us attend workplaces where it isn't appropriate to
Mhm.
overtly display or share your faith, and I'm sure you have to pick your spots on your own with that. How can a Christian kind of show their Christianity, I guess, without being overt about it or violating any kind of rule of the workplace?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll share this quick story with you. So at a previous place of employment where I was working as an HR leader, there was another leader and we worked on the same floor together. And I knew that she was a believer. I knew that she was a believer, but she didn't know that I was at first. And what I found is that in the littlest things, we can display our faith without being overt about it. So, for example, when we were getting off the elevator, I stepped back and I let her off first, just being kind. I would go up to her in the mornings and I'd say, "Hey, how's it going? You need anything? Anything I can help you with?" Just being that type of person where I just am trying to bless and be peaceful. I'm also the type of person when I'm on a leadership team, when things get really, really crazy and everybody's starting to kind of go like this about a particular issue. I've always tried to be the calm in the storm, and everybody's like, John, how are you so calm when all of us are going crazy and yelling at each other? And I said, well, there's a reason for that. You'll find out. She eventually came up to me one day after working with her for a year. She comes to my office and she closes the door. She goes, John, you're a believer, aren't you? I said, how'd you guess? She goes, just in the little things about you. You didn't have to tell me you were a Christian. I just noticed it by the way you treat people, by the way you care for people as an HR professional. I could tell there was something different about you, and you didn't have to tell me about it. And then she actually became my workplace buddy, my workplace Christian buddy. If she was having a hard day or if I was having a hard day, we would vent to each other. And that's how I found a workplace buddy, just by being a Christian without having to wear it on my sleeve. Just in the littlest things, people will pick up on it and they'll want to know, what is it about John that's different? I got to know. And then they find out.
Uh, That's a great story. I mean, I had a similar thing in that I was managing a large team of people in a high tech company, and one of my managers underneath me came to me and said, "I know you're a Christian. Why don't you go around talking about your Christianity? You're supposed to, you know, be evangelizing people, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, people know because I talk about things that I do at church, you know, like working with church youth and things like that. So they understand my context. Then, you know, I just try to live doing to others and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
really, at some point, then my own manager came up to me during a golf outing and said, "Hey, I want to know, what is John 3:16? What does that mean?"
Love it.
And
Love
you
it.
kind of take a breath, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to my boss about Jesus, right? And but he asked, so and he asked for a reason, right? I didn't go around telling him a lot about it, but he was able to see. So I think I agree with you that I think the way that we go about, we can give little hints that we're a
Mhm.
safe place, that we're
Yes.
someone who has a religious background, and go from there. So. Um,
I,
and go ahead.
I was actually going to share something really quick with you because I think you kind of made a really great point there. In my book, I don't want to give it all away, but there's a part of my book where I talk about what do we do as Christians when we find ourselves in those tough situations, right? Well, maybe there's somebody who's going around collecting money for an organization that violates our conscience as a Christian and our faith. Well, how do we politely tell them no? And still be somebody who shows love to them and is graceful to them. And in my book, I actually share an acronym, the GRACE acronym, GRACE. I won't give it all away here. Hopefully, all your listeners will buy the book and they'll see it. But that GRACE acronym is actually something that I've used and I've shared with others that when you find yourself in that situation, because it's easy when it's peaceful to kind of show the little things. But what about in those moments when you're like, oh man, I feel the pressure. I need to either give money or I feel pressure. I might have to compromise my faith here. What do I do in this situation? The GRACE acronym is something that it's a 5-step process you can walk through to gracefully still uphold your faith and still bless the person who maybe be pushing up against you.
Hmm.
So,
And it makes me think of a phone call I just got recently. I was going to share with you that a friend called me last week and was asking for guidance on how to be a Christian in a very contentious, emotional work environment. And he's like, I want to tell this guy off, but
mhm.
at the same time, I want to be a Christian. How do I do that, right? And so that's one example. And then another example I think we run into is when the ethics are fuzzy in the company itself. And there have been times I was asked to do unethical things, right? So in environments where there's contention and certainly not congeniality, and in places where you're asked to do things that really go against your Christian values, does this acronym still work, or do you have any other, kind of ideas for people on navigating such environments?
Yeah, I think that acronym that's in my book, the GRACE, that little GRACE framework will help with that. But I'll also share this, 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, so whenever you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. And for me, that is also includes my interactions with people in the workplace. If we were just, my dad, who was a business owner, he was like, I love the fact when I only worked for myself because I didn't have to deal with people. And unfortunately, it's the people that bring the tension and the contention for us, right? In the workplace, and the different personalities and people rub up against us because they just, maybe we're of our Christian faith and they're not. But I'll share this story with you really quick. So, in a position not too long ago, there was another leader. We were kind of on the same level. And every time I come across this guy, he looked angry. He looked like he just always had this like, resting mean face. He's always like, whenever I want to talk to him. And I was always like, man, this guy, he must really hate me. Like I would say good morning, he'd be like, morning, and just walk away. Like, and he was just, I mean, this is a very successful executive, but he just, and I began to do something that we have to watch ourselves as Christians do. I began to personalize it, and I began to say, maybe it's me. Maybe he has a problem with me. Maybe there's something about me. Maybe my face angers him. I don't know, right? So I made this decision. I remembered 1 Corinthians 10, and I started to do this thing where I just started to go up to him every day, and I would say in the morning, I would say, "Hey man, how you doing? Good morning to you." He'd go, "Good morning." Same thing next morning. "Hey, how are the wife and kids?" "They're good." After a few months of that, eventually he came up to me. He goes, "You know what, John? I've been kind of a jerk to you, and you've been nothing but nice to me." He goes, "You know what? Everybody here just assumes that I'm a jerk to them on purpose. He goes, it's just because it's the way I was raised and some trauma I've been through in my life." Boom. All of a sudden now, guess what's happening? I'm ministering. We're meeting up, we're talking, and now I now have a great friend. All because I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to just be graceful and just bless this person and try to just show up as, as Christ, just in the littlest things. And just whether it's saying good morning or how's the family, no matter how mean or angry he was to him, I was still going to let my interactions with him give God glory. And eventually it wore him down. and we became best friends. He actually just texted me earlier today. He actually said, John, what should I do in this HR situation? I'm like, I'm gonna have to start charging you, dude. But no,
Well,
it's just, yeah.
that fits very much something that I like to say. When you find yourself saying, "What's up with them?" you just ask a very good question, right? If we really explore what's up with them, or not that we have to get into their business, but we have to start thinking about, are they just a jerk, or is something going on today? Is there some sort of other thing buried in their life? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and and sometimes we have to remember that our perspective of other people has to be that that's also a child of God. That's somebody who's been created in his likeness. And I also found out that that person was a believer. Like that was also a sinner saved by grace, like me. I'm a sinner saved by grace. I am by far am I anywhere near perfect. But sometimes we remind ourselves, you know what? That person that I feel like contention with, God created them. That's a child of God, and I need to try to see God in them as I interact with them.
Let me pause a moment because it's time to think about Advent. Well, it may seem early, but adult small groups and Sunday school classes need to consider now what they will study during the Advent season, and I have just the thing. My Advent video study, The Misfits of Christmas, has been acclaimed as a fresh new take on the Christmas story. I share the stories of misfits in secular Christmas stories like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, alongside biblical misfits like the shepherds and Mary. From their journeys, we can learn how to take Christmas into the rest of the year. The four-part video series is accompanied by a study guide that is fun and yet causes you to think. Please visit CecilTaylorMinistries.com. Click on Books and Videos, then choose The Misfits of Christmas. This is the only place you can find The Misfits of Christmas is on CecilTaylorMinistries.com. While there are several video player options for groups, I recommend this special offer for individuals who want to watch Misfits on their own. The streaming version of the four videos plus the study guide is just $25, ideal for both groups and for individuals. Learn more at CecilTaylorMinistries.com. My guest today on the Practical Faith Academy is John Englehart. And John, what is your favorite Bible verse that applies to so many situations? Your theme, I guess, for a workplace.
One of my favorite scriptures is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as though working for the Lord and not for human masters. My favorite scripture. And if I could, I would, like I said, I would put it on my car so everybody can see it when I'm driving down the street if I could. That's my favorite.
That's great. A favorite saying of mine is if we're not living messy, inconvenient lives, we may not be following Jesus closely enough. So, how can we get messier with our lives and accept inconvenience as a steady state?
Yeah, I think that for me, um, this comes up a lot, especially if you're a working mom, or if you are working, you have, a spouse and children. Life is naturally going to be messy. Kids are messy. The things that come along with leading a family are messy. And I often find I often get so much wisdom from working moms who I happen to coach, because you want to talk about messy. I mean, how do they keep it all together? How do they, as a stay-at-home mom or a working mom, how do they make sure that the kids get where they need to go and make sure that the house is taken care of? And they have such an important role, and sometimes we forget about that, but they are the ones who have really spoken to my life and shared with me some great advice for me as I'm out in the office place about how I deal with the messiness of work and life. And I'll share this with you. So, a lady who I coach, she actually gave me a really great piece of advice that I actually took and put it in my book. And it's called to yielding to mercy towards yourself. And when she told me this, I said, "What do you mean by that?" She goes, "Well, life has a way of filling up fast. Our lives fill up fast, and especially if you have family and kids, it fills up fast. And we find ourselves pulled in so many directions, right? But sometimes we have to step back and yield towards mercy towards ourselves and ask ourselves, am I living balanced here? Am I really living balanced in my life? Am I giving too much to my son's travel baseball, and that's taking so many hours of my life, but I'm not giving as much time to my wife and taking her out on a date? So that was a great piece of advice because sometimes I have to step back and remind myself in the midst of the messiness, in the midst of the busyness, sometimes I will step back and I will go through a checklist that I have for myself. I'll do it like once a month and I'll go through this checklist. It's actually in my book, but the checklist actually makes you ask yourself some hard questions. And some of them are really tough about where are you giving most of your heart at this time and what can you really remove so that you have that balance in the midst of the messiness. And I share that with a lot of people to really help them find that balance again in their lives in the midst of the messiness.
So let me ask you one last question on faith. What do you find is the hardest part about putting faith into practice?
My flesh, for
Hmm.
sure, my flesh. You know, Jesus, he went to the cross, he died for me, he shed his blood, and I am spiritually reborn, but I am still on this earth in this earth suit that loves to go like this against my spirit, right? So that's the hardest part is our flesh for sure. And every day waking up and being intentional about how I'm going to walk in the spirit, remind myself how I'm going to walk in the spirit, pray about that, and then just constantly remember that I have to keep my flesh in check so that I can really give God glory, experience his purpose at work, and experience giving peace to others is really all about keeping my flesh in check and just walking in that spirit. And that's the hardest challenge. And it's interesting. My perspective has always been inward at me, like my walk in the flesh. But as my kids are getting older, I'm seeing it in them. Like I'm like, wow, like they are also feeling that same struggle trying to walk in faith, but their flesh. So it's almost like being able to coach them on how to walk in the spirit and really discipline your flesh so that we can really walk in our faith.
John, tell our listeners how they can follow you and find your book.
Yeah. So you can find all of my books on Amazon. My book, The Sunday Scaries, is on there. I also have another book on there. It's called Go Ask Your Father. It's a 30-day devotional for fathers and sons to go through with all of my silly stories in there. And so far, that's been a pretty good hit. So those two books are on Amazon right now. You can also go to my author site, johnenglehart.com. There you can find out a lot about what I'm up to, books, upcoming books, speaking engagements, all that good stuff. You can find me there. But also, and this is a new thing, you can also find me on Instagram. My daughter's helping me become an Instagram aficionado now. So every every Sunday night, I post a little 60, little 1 or 2 minute reel where I give what I call the Sunday Scaries Reset, which is just an encouragement every Sunday night about the week ahead. And I've been doing that every Sunday night. So you can find me, John Englehart Jr., on Instagram.
That's a brilliant idea, John. And so much of what you said is applicable to our lives. I think it's hard to come away from this podcast and not feel enriched, not feel like you have some new ideas. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being with us today.
Thank you, Cecil. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Love the discussion today with John Englehart Jr. Please check the show notes to find all the links and options he just shared. The next Practical Faith Academy episode in the first half of September will bring us to the important topic of caregiving. Originally, Ingrid Hansen Pop was supposed to be the guest for this episode, but I felt like John's topic tied very well to the prior episode, so I moved Ingrid out to September. Hansen Pop is passionate about helping caregivers and has written a book on the topic of caregiving and on becoming adult orphans when our parents pass. Be sure to check for that conversation in the first half of September. I talked earlier about the Misfits of Christmas, and I'd really appreciate you investigating that video study and study guide, along with my other books and small group video studies. I offer a number of no-cost ways to benefit from my ministry. Subscribe to this podcast, follow Cecil Taylor Ministries on Facebook or Instagram, but be sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletters, Ministry Connection and Backstage Pass. They combine practical faith tips with updates on the ministry and on my life as well. These days, I'm using Backstage Pass to journal my authoring of my new book, The 40-Day Spiritual Soak. The August issue just discussed the behind-the-scenes tasks to publish the book and shared an excerpt of the book. Visit CecilTaylorMinistries.com and either select the Practical Faith Game Plan offer or scroll down the homepage to register for my newsletters. Read about all these opportunities in the show notes and how you can stay in touch with my ministry. Until next time, remember, God sends you into the world every day.